I saw into the Dogman universe. Dear Scary Stories NYC, during the pandemic, I took to getting most of my exercise by walking and running around in the woods behind where I was living at the time. And that was where something life-changing happened to me. I not only had a direct experience with what had to have been a dogman, but I got to glimpse into the parallel or alternate world where he comes from. I feel for the first time that I understand what the dogman is, or at least I've begun to comprehend what it isn't. This story happened during the period in which I started jogging during parts of my morning walk. This was because I had gained weight since I had started taking the walks, which were designed for me to lose weight. I had used some of that sweet stimulus money from the prior administration and bought me jogging clothes when this all started. And it's a good thing I did, too. Pretty soon I was so overweight that the jogging clothes were all that still fit. By the way, I'm not judging any of you because of body size or anything like that. It was extremely upsetting to me personally to balloon up like that, though, because I'd always been able to maintain my weight more easily before 2020. So I was jogging for a stretch one morning before dawn in a part of the woods I had never seen other people at before the sun came up. I was very shy about being seen exercising at that point, and I would find private places to do my bits of jogging. I'd also do it during the coolest part of the day just before the sun came up because it got me so overheated and sweaty. I was leaning on a tree, desperately gasping for air and realizing how out of shape I had become when I could have sworn I heard someone else panting too. Embarrassed that someone else was seeing me about to collapse after just a short sprint, I looked around, left and right, but I saw no other runner anywhere around me. I wanted to listen harder for that panting sound I thought I was hearing, but my heart was beating so loudly in my ears that there wasn't much I could do but wait until my body had calmed down and recovered from my exertion. I turned around and slid down the tree I had been leaning on, landing in a seated position on the dirt and tree roots below. Although I thought someone was standing there, I clearly was not feeling threatened by them yet, if I was willing to sit down against a tree like that. Soon I closed my eyes, trying to calm myself and slow my heartbeat. I may have briefly dozed off, or possibly I was almost about to, when I heard an odd and surprising noise coming from the woods, which got my attention. I'm not even entirely sure how to describe the sound. It seemed artificial, like a pinging kind of an electronic sound. I opened my eyes and there, off into the woods, I could see a bluish light glowing in the darkness. It reminded me of the color that old black and white televisions used to give off if you saw them from outside a window. That flickering blue light. This was like that. If you're too young to remember what I mean, I'm not sure how else to describe it. I stood up and walked into the tree line, peering around to find the blue light and who it belonged to. Well, I saw the light in those woods all right, but I didn't see it belonging to anybody. It just floated there, about 3 feet off the ground. I couldn't understand if I was seeing a concentrated swirling of luminous gases, or if this was, in fact, some kind of a television set. Was I supposed to be reading images from that glowing, flickering blue light source? Or was it some other kind of machine? Was it a living being? Was it a projection? Was it an electrical phenomenon? I did not know what I was looking at, but I watched it move a few feet in my direction, and as it did so, I witnessed this one singular phenomenon drip and split into 2 distinct phenomena, a swirling, twirling liquid place in reality, and a creature which was now no longer a part of that liquid. I would say that I had just seen an entity emerging from a portal, but it really was more as though I saw liquid become a solid, real flesh and blood creature. It was not a creature that one would expect to see while out resting after jogging, but I can't say it was unexpected given the context in which it was existing in. It was a chimera, I think. You know, those animals depicted in ancient times that appear to be 2 or 3 different kinds of animals combined. This was like that. The head was much like a truly vicious, wild kind of a dog. The body was not unlike a Bigfoot, only the legs were canine. It was covered in dark fur like a brown bear, and yet it was not any kind of bear at all. It stood up like a human. Yet no human being has a long dog snout or wolf ears up on top of its head. This is why I suggest that I was looking at a chimera, a combination of different animals, or at least animals which are separate and distinct in our reality. I am of the opinion that I saw this creature sort of climb into our world from a different one, or I guess it would be something more like seeing it melt out of that world and solidify into ours. I've called it a vortex, but I think it reminded me more of a navel or belly button than anything else. Now I'll contradict myself. It also reminded me of a water faucet, and what came out of that spigot or drain had to have been the same thing that everyone thinks is an indigenous American cryptid, the Dogman. Because of what I experienced, I don't think it really comes from here. I think it comes to here. So now remember back when I was talking about resting against the tree even though I had heard panting like my own in the woods? Remember me back then saying that I did not at that point feel threatened? Well, now that I was standing maybe 30 feet from the Dogman chimera that was doing the panting, now that I was watching his tongue wagging in and out, up and down with each pant, I was feeling pretty threatened. I had a fresh idea in my mind of how bad I was at running, how out of shape I was, and how slow I was on top of everything else. So I was not feeling good about my odds of escaping this situation unharmed. The creature's skull alone was probably longer than my torso. I'm not saying the animal was 20 feet tall or anything. It was something like 7 feet or maybe a little more. But the Dogman had a huge cranium, that's all. And its hands were large, too, with sharp, nasty-looking claws almost more like cat claws than dog claws, or almost like fish hooks in a sense. I wanted to run, but I lacked the strength or the belief that it would do much good, so I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on the Dogman as I did so. I had not been told that was a good thing to do. I just lacked any better ideas at the time. Once I got out from under the tree cover, I noticed that the sun was actually beginning to come out. It was getting lighter. That was when I noticed a few people out jogging where I had been earlier. I called out to them for help, and I began trotting in their direction. They asked me what the problem was, and looking back, I could no longer see where the creature had been. I told them that someone had dragged me off into the woods, and they insisted I call the authorities about it. I really didn't want to do that, but they exerted a lot of peer pressure on me. I promised them I would call the cops, and they left me alone. I walked quickly after them, and occasionally I thought I heard sounds coming from the woods. But when I did this time, I just walked faster. That was the end of me exercising out of doors. When I ride on my bike machine in my apartment, I don't risk being interrupted by dogmen from alternate parallel dimensions, like what happened to me the morning that I saw into the Dogman universe. Whether you're a tyrant or if you're ignored, you gotta thank 0718 Dragon Lord. If you cut the cord or eat particle board, you gotta thank 0718 Dragon Lord. Please join us in thanking 0718 Dragon Lord for rejoining the channel memberships and making this episode possible. In return, we send them links to our secret uncensored Sunday stories, tales far too wild to ever tell on this channel. Our spokesdog, Henry Lee Dogman, will be here at the very end of the show to fill you in with more deets. But we've got another Dogman experience story to tell you before we get to that. You know, on this channel, we try to stay out of social or political stuff. It's usually pretty easy to chop down the political commentary people send us in their Dogman stories. There are exceptions, however, and this next one is one of them. I was going to use this as one of our secret uncensored stories, but there's nothing about the Dogman that I would need to censor out of it. This person and his live-in girlfriend were seeing a Dogman until his local government changed their lives so drastically that they no longer see the cryptid anymore at all. I don't know how to leave the politics out of this one, since it's directly embedded in the story. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with this couple, but I would like to present what they've sent me for you to consider. Their opinions do not represent our opinions or YouTube's opinions, but be warned, these two are opinionated. If this is something that would be upsetting to you in any way, then maybe skip over this story and come back tomorrow for our next one. Now that you've been thoroughly warned, we're going to jump into this narrative, which we are calling the Saturday Night Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC, my girlfriend and I used to see the Dogman every Saturday night for a while. We even came to call him the Saturday Night Dogman. We left to go out partying one night a couple of years back, and there, on the side of the road, was a big, gray, hairy Sasquatch of a dog. I mean, it stood up well over 6 feet tall and was very hairy as well, but it had a dog head. What kind of creature has a big, upright, two-legged, hairy body, but a dog head? We did our research and discovered that we had in fact seen the North American upright walking canid, better known as the Dogman. And that wasn't the last time we saw him either. We were seeing him closer to home over time. We were seeing him behave in a more frightening manner, and we were increasingly threatened by his presence. The first time we saw it, we just looked at it, and it looked at us. The second time we saw it, the massive hairy thing darted in front of us on the entrance ramp on the highway. We were lucky nobody was behind us, or we would have been smashed from the rear. We barely avoided hitting the creature. It was almost as though it wanted to cause an accident. That time, when we saw it, it was fully lit up by our headlights. We could see its brown fur that looked gray in the dark. We could see its white, flashing eyes. Fully dilated pupils made it look insane and otherworldly. We could also make out the immense, bright, yellow, stained teeth and fangs as it ran by. That head and snout were so big and so long that I bet it could bite half your arm off in one snap. Imagine trying to drive on the highway after having something like that happen. I felt like I was going to have a heart attack. Still, I would give anything to be able to go back to those days. The third time we saw that same Dogman, it was waiting for us, and it ran out to block our lane. It was singling us out for harassment, and even though we were inside tons of metal and steel, while he was out there on the road completely unclothed, we still felt overmatched and unsafe in his presence. The creature caused us to stop in the middle of the road, then started marching toward our car. Someone else drove up behind us, beeping like crazy, alerting us that we were about to be rear-ended. Another car approached from the distance in the opposite lane. That guy beeped loudly too, but I think he was beeping at or about the Dogman in front of us on the highway. In either case, the creature got spooked and ran off the road. We were able to get out of the way of that car coming up behind us, and we avoided any accident or injury. But it was no thanks to that Dogman, who nearly got us smashed up and seemed to have done it on purpose. The most recent time we saw that animal, he was hiding in the shadows just past the end of the block we live on. Martha saw him in time to warn me, and I made a sharp left turn, ruining his apparent plan to jump out in front of us again. That was very disturbing at the time when it happened. The concept that the Dogman had followed us back to our place of origin. We were panicked and speaking to our friends about it, asking them for advice. It wasn't that long ago, yet some of those friends have already stopped talking to us because they now only talk to people who agree with their political party. When this was going on, I have to admit I was fairly concerned about this subject. I mean, it weighed on my mind daily and I lost sleep over it. Both Martha, not her real name, and I were worried that the area we lived in was becoming overrun with dogmen, and that one of us might become injured or worse due to the close proximity of these man-eating beasts that are not even recognized as legitimately existing by the majority of the establishment. Who do you sue if you get attacked or bitten by an animal that is not officially recognized as existing? These days, with everything else going on, I actually feel nostalgic for the time when my biggest worry was a carnivorous monster living in my neighborhood. Now I have to worry about whether the government is going to force our employer to fire both of us for political reasons. I long for the days before my own species was trying to destroy my life, when we only had to deal with fur-covered predators. Our lives have become so much scarier since our own government began treating us as their enemy, actively seeking ways to bankrupt us and destroy our ability to own a business or even work for a living. In those days, Saturday was a night for us to go out and have fun. We aren't even allowed in the bars and clubs we used to frequent any longer because of the choices of our local governance. The Dogman might still be out there, but who would even know? We are no longer afforded the freedom of movement that he is still allowed. We are locked inside watching YouTube, wondering if we will still have paying work by Monday. But this is a story about far better times. This is a story about 2019. How innocent we all were then. We still believed in our institutions and electoral process. We were already aware that we should never trust the medical establishment, but we naively thought that our American way of life was still sacred and safe, well protected in a logical way by reasonable leaders. We have been disabused of those notions in a harsh and violent series of oversteps and abuses since then, to the point where it's hard to remember how scared we were of the Dogman while this was going on. It's hard to fear for your life when you're in the process of losing your entire way of life. I remember getting in the car on Saturday nights, Martha all dressed up. She used to dress up all the time in those days. I haven't seen her in anything but jeans in so long. I bet most of her old dresses don't even fit any longer. She used to smile in those days, too. Those were beautiful days, and she was a beautiful woman. We were supposed to marry in 2020, but now I don't know if we ever will. The future no longer seems something worth betting on. Not just here, but any place on the planet. Back then, though, she'd hop into the car all bright-eyed, and we'd head off to have fun dancing every single weekend. I wonder if we'll ever be able to do that again. We tried going out for a drive a few weeks back, but went back home very quickly afterward. It was too depressing looking at how many of our old haunts are now closed down for good. It was even more depressing still to see the ones that are still open no longer allowing people in unless they agree with a certain political party about certain medical issues. We live in a one-party town, and disagreement with the party now means starvation. That's much scarier than the scariest cryptid. You'll just have to take my word for it. Martha and I are talking about moving, but where would the money come from to do that? And how long will the free states remain free? How much longer will any part of our country realistically be able to remain self-determining? And while we're locked up by our own species, will another species be in the process of taking over? How much of this country will they succeed in taking back? How great will humanity's losses be to the Dogman? Will we eventually find ourselves living on a planet ruled by the creature that we used to call the Saturday Night Dogman? Thanks for watching till the end. If you liked what you saw, please consider clicking like on the video or sharing it with your friends and family that you think might also be interested. If you would like to see more of our work, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon next to the subscribe button so that YouTube will alert you when we put out a new video. To become a channel member and gain access to our special perks, you can click that join link under each of our videos. Another option is to join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. You can join for as little as 99 cents on YouTube or $1.50 at peterbernard.com, and that gains you access to our weekly secret uncensored episodes. If you'd like to see our 21 hours of archives of uncensored Dogman stories, then please join at the $3 level or above. To get to watch our shows in advance of the public, please join at our $10 level. That gets you all the perks. If you join our channel memberships, you need to check our community page here on YouTube in order to get the links to the secret videos and other perks. If you're in the PayPal subscribers club, Peter will email you all the news and links himself. Once joining the PayPal club, which is Peter's homemade club, please give him a chance to see that you've joined and to compose you a personal welcome email, as none of that is automated. But whichever you join, we'll name you an executive producer for the next available episode. Do you have a scary experience that you'd like to share with us? You can email us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or call our Scary Stories voicemail hotline at 804-LA-SCARY. That's 804-537-2279. It's a Google voicemail box, so that means it keeps cutting off after every 3 minutes. If your story is longer than that, please keep calling back and we can piece it together on our end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.